Dime.
De audio para las personas que están presentes aquí.
Están allá afuera, en la entrada de donde entra al auditorio.
Ajá, por el lobby.
LaSalle.
Ok, perfecto.
5 continents, 80 countries, more than 1 million members, and 300 years of history. Such a diverse community requires communicating what we are, think, do, and long for. Indivisa Font, a font system for the global Lasallian community. A common voice to reflect our personality. Traditional but innovative. Formal and fun. Approachable, fraternal. Fresh and energetic. Dynamic, expressive, versatile, or diverse. 2 families, 28 variants, and 25,000 glyphs to express ourselves in 270 languages. From the smallest to the largest, from what is simple to what is complex, with different rhythms and intonations, in numbers, codes, or signs. For digital environments or conventional media. A human font for a global and transformative community. Indivisa Font is for everyone and for everything.
Lasalle. 5 continentes, 80 países, más de 1 millón de integrantes y 300 años de historia. Una comunidad tan diversa requiere comunicar lo que somos, pensamos, hacemos y anhelamos. Indivisa Font, un sistema tipográfico para la comunidad lasallista global. Una voz común para reflejar nuestra personalidad. Tradicional pero innovadora. Formal y divertida. Cercana. Fraterna. Fresca y enérgica. Dinámica, expresiva, versátil o diversa. 2 familias, 28 variantes y 25.000 glifos para expresarnos en 270 idiomas. Desde lo más pequeño a lo más grande, de lo sencillo a lo complejo, con distintos ritmos y entonaciones, en números, códigos o signos. Para entornos digitales o soportes convencionales. Una tipografía humana para una comunidad global y transformadora. Indivisa Font es para todos y para todo.
The more I remember this place, the more I want to go back. The comfort, the colours, the flavours. We found ourselves in a vibrant city that surprises you at every step. A city so diverse, it makes you feel like there's never enough time to enjoy it. A city with so much history that in many places it seemed like time had stopped. A place so ever-changing that it even makes you change. I've never expected to find an 18th century castle in the middle of a huge city. I don't know how to explain it. We just have to go back. Mexico City, live it to believe it.
There was a man in France who dreamed a way to teach, who left his life behind and followed Jesus' Prince. Within the Negro world, freedom, poverty, he spread a seed of hope, he lit a light of peace.
Une fraternité continue la mission de le guide avec la foi, et aide ceux qui souffrent avec sa exigence. Les rames gagnent le cœur et ont raison de croire, tu peux changer la vie.
If it started taking redemption for the others who wanted to be and learn together. Preaching by example, always doing with His presence. We all learn from the Star Trek, we all walk through the Starway. We share one heart, one commitment, one life to live with all the rest. One love, one life, one commitment, living our hearts forever.
Hoy vamos tras sus pies, nos une un corazón, sintiendo nuestra fe, viviendo nuestra unión. La hora de la verdad, sembrando la ilusión, mirada más allá, Lasallian vive hoy. We share one heart, one commitment, one life to live with all the rest. One love, one life, one commitment, living our
Juan Bautista fue el primogénito del hogar de Luis de Lasalle Tocqueville.
one commitment, one life to live with all the rest. One love, one life, one commitment, living our hearts forever. We share one heart, one commitment, one life to live with all the rest. One love, one life, one commitment, living our hearts forever.
We share one heart, one commitment, one life to live with all the rest. One love, one life, one commitment, live in our hearts forever.
LaSalle. 5 continents, 80 countries, more than 1 million members, and 300 years of history. Such a diverse community requires communicating what we are, think, do, and long for. Indivisa Font, a font system for the global Lasallian community. A common voice to reflect our personality. Traditional but innovative. Formal and fun. Approachable, fraternal. Fresh and energetic. Dynamic, expressive. Versatile or diverse. 2 families, 28 variants, and 25,000 glyphs to express ourselves in 270 languages. From the smallest to the largest. From what is simple to what is complex, with different rhythms and intonations, in numbers, codes, or signs. For digital environments or conventional media. A human font for a global and transformative community. Indivisa Font is for everyone and for everything.
Lasallian. 5 continentes, 80 países, más de 1 millón de integrantes y 300 años de historia. Una comunidad tan diversa requiere comunicar lo que somos, pensamos, hacemos y anhelamos. Indivisa Font, un sistema tipográfico para la comunidad lasallista global. Una voz común para reflejar nuestra personalidad. Tradicional pero innovadora. Formal y divertida. Cercana. Fraterna. Fresca y enérgica. dinámica, expresiva, versátil o diversa. 2 familias, 28 variantes y 25.000 glifos para expresarnos en 270 idiomas. Desde lo más pequeño a lo más grande, de lo sencillo a lo complejo, con distintos ritmos y entonaciones, en números, códigos o signos. Para entornos digitales o soportes convencionales. Una tipografía humana para una comunidad global y transformadora. Indivisa Font es para todos y para todo.
There was a man in France who dreamed a way to teach. Who left his life behind and followed Jesus' Prince within the Negro world. Freedom, poverty, spread a seed of hope, a little light of peace.
Une fraternité continue la mission de le guide avec la foi. Eux est de ceux qui suivent avec sa exigence. Les rames gagnent le cœur et ont raison de croire. Tu peux changer la vie.
If we decided to take an option for the others, we wanted to be and learn together, preaching by example, always doing with His presence. We all learn from the Star Trek, we all walk through the Skyway. We share one heart, one common man, one life to live with all the rest. One love, one life, one common man, living our hearts forever.
Luis de la Salle fue consejero real en la Iglesia de Dios. Provenía de una familia ilustre.
Hoy vamos tras sus pies, nos une un corazón, sintiendo nuestra fe, viviendo nuestra unión. La hora de la verdad, sembrando la ilusión, mira más allá, la Salle vive hoy. We share one heart, one common name, one life to live with all the rest. One love, one life, one common name, living our hearts forever. We share one heart, one common name, one life to live with all the rest. One love, one life, one common name, living our hearts forever. We share one heart, one common heart, one life to live with all the rest. One love, one life, one common name, living our hearts forever.
We share one heart, one commitment, one life to live with all the rest. One love, one life, one commitment, living our hearts forever.
Your attention, please. You are at the Adrian Gibert Auditorium of LaSalle University. This auditorium has 6 emergency exits situated, 1 at the front, 3 in the central hall, and 2 more at the back. In case there is an earthquake or fire, the alarm system will be activated. Go to the nearest exit and follow the surveillance personnel's indications. Remember, do not run, do not push, nor shout during the evacuation from the auditorium. Thank you for your attention. Su atención, por favor. Se encuentra usted en el auditorio Adrian Gibert de la Universidad La Salle. Este auditorio cuenta con 6 salidas de emergencia, ubicadas, una en la parte frontal, 3 en el corredor central y 2 más en la parte posterior. En caso de sismo o incendio, se activará el sistema de alarma. Diríjase a la puerta de salida más cercana y siga las indicaciones del personal de vigilancia. Recuerde, no correr, no empujar, ni gritar durante la evacuación del auditorio. Por su atención, gracias. Your attention, please. You are at the Adrian Gibert Auditorium of La Salle University. This auditorium has 6 emergency exits situated, 1 at the front, 3 in the central hall, and 2 more at the back. In case there is an earthquake or fire, the alarm system will be activated. Go to the nearest exit and follow the surveillance personnel's indications. Remember, do not run, do not push, nor shout during the evacuation from the auditorium. Thank you for your attention.
Una posible interpretación de las danzas prehispánicas con ambientes sonoros de caracoles y ocarinas, además de tambores y otras percusiones. La investigación sobre estas danzas a nivel nacional se ha basado en los códices, esculturas de pirámides y lugares
codes,
sagrados.
pyramids, and sacred places.
Muy buenos días.
Good morning.
Sean todos bienvenidos al
Be
Congreso
welcome
Mundial
at the World Congress of Lasallian Education within the frame of the 300th anniversary of our founder, St. John Baptiste de La Salle. This anniversary gathers us today to celebrate our Lasallian heritage. This is also an opportunity to renew our commitment to work hard to reassure the vitality of the Lasallian mission. We need to focus on a future full of hope. So I'll mention the authorities that will precede this opening ceremony. Brother Gustavo, who is the Secretary General for Mission. Brother Paulo Pepe, who is the General Counselor of RELAL. Timothy Copway, Ricardo Layuda, Rafael Matas, counselors. Brother Pedro Alvarez Arenas, visitor from the district of Antillas, from Mexico. Sister Maria Cervantes Heredia, Superior General of the Guadalupean Sisters. Brother Enrique González Álvarez, Rector of the Universidad Lasallian, Mexico City. So please welcome them with a warm applause. We'll also ask you a moment of prayer for Brother Shiley, Superior General. We also have with us today María de Jesús Felipa Guardado, President from the Particular School Association. Oscar A. Pérez Agallos, General Secretary of the Inter-American Catholic Conciliation. José Rodríguez Pérez Porrúa from Porrúa SADCB. Sisters from the General Council of the Guadalupean Sisters of De La Salle. This morning, we are here gathered together different educators from the Lasallian network, rectors, presidents, researchers, brothers, teachers, administratives. We all represent more than 100,000 people that daily try to spread a message of hope among our students. So I'll welcome you today. Also, we are streaming live, and we want to welcome to this conversation through the hashtag 300 LaSalle, and we are LaSalle. Now we're going to listen to the opening message from Brother Pedro Rodriguez from Mexico's district.
Muy buenos días para todos.
Good morning to everyone.
Muy queridos hermanos,
Dear
hermanas,
sisters,
asociados y
brothers,
colaboradores.
affiliates, and colleagues,
Bienvenidos todos a México,
welcome to
a
Mexico,
nuestro Congreso Internacional
to the
de
World
Educación
Congress
Lasallian.
of Lasallian Education.
Juntos,
Together,
provenientes de todos los continentes,
coming from different
nos encontramos
continents,
fraternalmente
we gather
unidos en torno a nuestro carisma,
together in a
espiritualidad y
fraternal
misión, para mejor
way
amar y
to
servir
spread
a
our
quienes Dios en su
Lasallian
bondad,
charisma,
compasión y misericordia nos
to continue talking on how to help those who are trusted in under our care. Mexico is home of St. Mary's of Guadalupe,
llegaron los primeros hermanos lasallistas procedentes de
and more than 114 years ago, the first brothers from LaSalle came out of France. And since then, we've grown together through these years. On behalf of the Lasallian community from Mexico and Antillas, we welcome you to this Congress.
Los apapachamos, decimos en náhuatl,
We
palabra que
pamper
significa
you.
los abrazamos
Comes
con el
from
alma,
Nahuatl and means to embrace with the soul.
de corazón a
And we are
corazón.
gathered from heart to heart.
Ya los esperaba.
We were expecting
Hace
you
más de 2 años,
more than 2 years ago, and mainly
hemos estado
in
desde Roma y
these
México
2 last months,
pensando en
we've been thinking in Rome and in Mexico about this Congress, organizing it
orando
with
para
passion
llegar a este momento y para lo que
to
se
come to this
desprenda.
moment and have,
Gracias a ustedes por prepararse
thank
para
you
llegar aquí también.
to all of you for being here, for preparing presentations, workshops, and thank you for sharing
Además de
a
los
moment with
festejos
us.
de los próximos meses de abril y mayo,
Within the different celebrations, within these months, to celebrate the birth, death, and life of our holy founder,
de los 300 años,
in the celebration of the 300 years anniversary of our founder, this Congress, which is a educational, pedagogical, spiritual,
que alimenta,
that
actualiza,
nurtures
fortalece y
and
proyecta
enhances
las
the
figuras
Lasallian
beneficias
project within the church and society is key for this year of celebration.
para nosotros.
For us,
Educar es un acto de amor.
educating is an act of love.
La educación evangelizadora nos hace
The
discípulos
evangelism education is very important for us to build the kingdom of God and spreading justice and peace within faith communities associated to the education of the poor from and for them and for all.
quienes estamos aquí en este congreso. Venimos como embajadores de la
We
Salle
come here as ambassadors of De La Salle in
unidos para gloria de la
sharing our Indivisa Manen
y adorando
motto,
en todo la voluntad de Dios
and
para
we
cada
worship the God's will
Vivir como
among
hermanos
us.
y hermanas
Living as brothers and sisters
y
is
de ello
possible,
nosotros somos testigos.
and we are witness of that.
Sean pues bienvenidos
So please,
hombres y mujeres llenos
once
de
more,
Dios.
be welcome to this Congress,
Bienvenidos a este
you that
Congreso
are
de esperanza,
people of
donde el
God,
amor nos da ojos para ver todo lo que
and
ve,
love will give us
corazón para
eyes to
sentir
see
y
through faith.
reconocer a Dios en todo lo que
It will
acontece,
give us peace to
y
serve
manos para trabajar
God,
por
and
la
will give us
justicia y la paz,
hands to work
haciendo
for
creíble su
justice and
presencia
peace.
transformadora en el mundo. Bienvenidos todos. A
Welcome
nombre de los
everyone
niños y jóvenes,
on behalf of
maestros y pobres,
children,
que se beneficiarán de
teachers,
que
and
estemos
the poor
juntos.
that will be benefit from
Dicen que el mejor lugar
from our
para
meetings
estar
today.
es en la mente, en el corazón y en la
We'll,
oración
we'll
diaria.
use our mind, our hearts,
Y este congreso,
and this
soñado
Congress
y hoy realizado,
that
ha
we've
pasado
dreamed about
claramente el corazón
for since
y la
many
oración de
years
todos.
will like to spread
Nos unimos
the
a nuestro
love
hermano superior general
through all.
y a todos los lasallistas.
So we also pray for the General Superior.
Santa María de Guadalupe
God bless
nos acompaña.
us.
San
St.
José,
Mary of
patrón
Guadalupe
y protector del instituto y
walks
modelo de
with
educador,
us,
nos alienta. Y San Juan Bautista
and
de
St.
la
John
Salle
Baptist de La Salle
nos mira y nos
looks at us and smiles to
Bienvenidos a
us.
México.
Welcome to
La
Mexico.
Universidad La Salle,
On behalf of
estamos en
La
casa.
Universidad La Salle,
Corazón,
we welcome you this is your home.
Bienvenidos.
We're going to share one heart, one commitment, and one life. Welcome.
Juan Bautista fue el primogénito del hogar de Luis de Lasalle Coquebert y Nicolasa Moët l'Espagnol. Nació el 30 de abril de 1651 en Reims, una ciudad famosa por su catedral, donde se consagraban los reyes de Francia. Luis de Lasalle fue consejero real en la audiencia de Reims. Provenía de una familia de magistrados. Nicolasa Moët perteneció a una familia noble, propietaria de tierras. El nuevo hogar de Lasalle Moët, sin ser noble, disfrutaba de los privilegios propios de las familias ricas de la época. El niño Juan Bautista fue instruido en un ambiente profundamente cristiano. Preparado por preceptores en su propia casa, entró en el colegio de los niños buenos de Reims a los 9 años. Recibió una excelente formación humanista. A sus 11 años, Juan Bautista obtiene la tonsura. Su familia acepta con entusiasmo la vocación de su primogénito al sacerdocio, y con casi 16 años recibió un puesto como canónigo de la Catedral de Reims. A partir de entonces, el joven Juan Bautista distribuyó su tiempo entre las obligaciones propias de la oración coral y las de sus estudios. Terminada su formación en el colegio y habiendo obtenido el título de maestro en artes, Juan Bautista se inscribió en la Universidad de Reims para estudiar teología. Sus padres lo encaminaron al seminario de San Sulpicio y a la Universidad de la Sorbona en París. Pero la muerte, primero de su madre y poco tiempo después de su padre, le hizo volver a Reims para encargarse de sus hermanos como tutor. En esa circunstancia, Juan Bautista de Lasalle mostró un excelente sentido de la administración y aseguró para sus hermanos la herencia recibida de sus padres. Resaltó especialmente su profunda vocación y su deseo de seguir a Jesucristo como sacerdote. Terminó su licenciatura en teología en la Universidad de Reims y se preparó para recibir el orden sacerdotal. Desde el inicio fue un joven sacerdote ejemplar. Continuó sus estudios de doctorado en teología y finalizó con éxito. Gozó de todas las condiciones necesarias para iniciar una excelente carrera eclesiástica. Durante ese periodo, a la edad de 27 años, recibió una carta de su prima Maillefer de Rouen por medio del maestro Adrien Niel. Se trataba de apoyar la organización de una escuela gratuita al servicio de los hijos de los artesanos y pobres de su ciudad. Este evento fortuito iba a transformar radicalmente su existencia. Así, Lasalle respaldó la apertura de 2 escuelas parroquiales. Niel, que fue un maestro hábil y experimentado, supo hablar al corazón del joven sacerdote. A lo largo de 3 años, Juan Bautista reunió en torno a sí a un primer grupo de maestros, les dio un reglamento de vida e incluso los llevó a vivir a su propia casa. Aunque fue incomprendido por su familia y la sociedad rica de su ciudad, estaba convencido de que Dios lo llamaba para servir en las escuelas. Finalmente, el 24 de junio de 1682, salió de su casa, con su primera comunidad de maestros. Había abandonado su vida de privilegios para atender a la mayor gloria de Dios. Había encontrado su vocación de educador, de formador de maestros y organizador de escuelas. Dejó incluso su canonjía y se hizo pobre como sus maestros para servir a Jesucristo pobre. Aun cuando casi todos los primeros maestros lo abandonaron, su ejemplo arrastró a otros jóvenes generosos y reinició su experiencia con una nueva generación que fue la que constituyó la primera comunidad de los hermanos de las escuelas cristianas. Como Pablo de Tarso, el joven Lasalle se sintió llamado por Jesucristo, consciente de que Dios quiere que todos los hombres se salven y lleguen al conocimiento de la verdad. Juan Bautista de Lasalle nos invita a seguir considerando la escuela como un espacio fraterno, donde los niños, jóvenes y adultos crecen junto a sus maestros, ministros y embajadores de Jesucristo, y construyen una pedagogía fraterna capaz de transformar sus vidas. Los hermanos comparten su carisma educativo con miles de hombres y mujeres dedicados plenamente a la educación que han encontrado en San Juan Bautista de Lasalle una nueva manera de ser iglesia, educando a niños, jóvenes y adultos como ciudadanos, comprometidos con la justicia y la paz en el mundo entero. Hoy, la educación lasalliana sigue siendo una poderosa herramienta de humanización capaz de generar lazos de fraternidad donde quiera que se encuentre. Juan Bautista de La Salle nunca soñó que su pequeño compromiso con una comunidad de maestros podría transformar la vida de más de 1 millón de estudiantes en más de 80 países en el año en que conmemoramos el tricentenario de su llegada a la Casa del Padre.
Special greetings to Monsieur from OIEC.
Lori, ¿qué te parece si
Lori, what about we greet the representatives from the different countries that are here with us today? I think it's a great idea. We'll start with Australia. Australia, where are you? Welcome.
Bélgica.
Belgium.
De Bélgica.
Belgium.
Bolivia.
Bolivia.
Brasil.
Brazil.
Canadá.
Canada.
Chile.
Chile.
Colombia.
Colombia.
Costa Rica.
Costa Rica.
Cuba.
Cuba.
Ecuador.
Ecuador.
Estados Unidos.
United States.
Eritrea, África.
Africa. Eritrea.
España.
Spain.
Filipinas.
Philippines.
Francia.
France.
Guatemala.
Guatemala. Haiti.
Hong Kong.
Hong Kong.
Italia.
Italy.
México.
Mexico.
Nicaragua.
Nicaragua.
Nigeria.
Nigeria.
Panamá.
Panama.
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico.
Singapur.
Singapore.
Suiza.
Switzerland.
Togo.
Togo, Africa.
Una comunidad global.
A global community,
de Lasallian.
the Lasallian community.
Escuchemos al hermano
Now
Gustavo
let's
Ramírez
listen
Barba,
to Brother Gustavo Ramirez Barba,
consejero general para la Asociación
General
de
Counselor for Association and Mission, that will share with us a message and will open this encounter. Good morning to all of you.
Hermano Enrique,
Brother Enrique,
en tu persona, quiero saludar y
I'd like to greet and thank all of the Lasallian community on your behalf.
en su condición de anfitriones
as host of this event, you've opened not only the doors of this house of higher education, but also, and most importantly, your heart. Please transmit all of the members of your community our thanks on behalf of the Lasallian community. Dear brothers from the General Council present here today, and brother visitors, dear members of the great Lasallian family, ladies and gentlemen, representatives from organizations and educational institutions close to LaSalle. We are gathered here today, and we represent an extraordinary assembly. We are, first, because we come from basically all of the regions from the Lasallian world. It is true that today the international events have turned into a frequent practice among organizations with a world presence. Nevertheless, the fact that we gather people from different countries keeps being important. Taking into account the nationality of the different authors of works, presentations, key addresses, we have a total of 27 represented countries. Secondly, we are an extraordinary assembly because we are also leading roles from the Institute. This is why we're making history. In third place, we are representing educational projects from different levels. All of these projects share a general conviction of being heirs of the spiritual mission of LaSalle. The presence of different educators of different levels answer to the last call from the General Chapter for collaboration among different levels of education. But most importantly, here this morning is that we express and we are full testimony of an effective commitment to education as a transformative path, personal transformation, social. This assembly could gather thanks to the work of Lasallian collaborators, our host today. And we'll have time to personally thank you all, but we'd like to say, since now, thank you. For me, it is a great honor to be here today and greet you on behalf of Brother Robert Shelley, our General Superior General. He was really excited and interested in this event from the beginning, and we kept telling him what was going on with the Congress and the advances that we had, and he had huge expectations. It was his desire to be here today with us. But he had to accept God's will, and he is now sure that first, his health is a priority for him and for the Institute. So let's keep him in our hearts and our prayers and minds in these days. On behalf of the Superior General and the community of the General Council, which is gathered here today, I invite you to make of this Congress an opportunity to dream big and to also build paths that lead us to the fulfillment of that dream. As active members of our societies, as responsible citizens from our countries, we work hard to fulfill a mission. We support each other and we find inspiration in St. John Baptist de La Salle and the testimony of different Lasallians that before us fulfilled the different needs and challenges of each time. Generations of Lasallians that had preceded us found the answers through research and a systematic research of community discernment from experience. And also, we have to keep in mind that there were hard decisions, like the exiliation of different brothers that left to fulfill a mission. And they were faithful, strong, and creative. Thanks to them and all of this, we can gather here today to follow their steps. This creativity has been recognized along more than 3 centuries. So I'll quote 2 examples. French philosophers before the Revolution and the Universal Exposition of Paris. In the 18th century, education had a huge impact in France, especially thanks to Rousseau, RELAN, Châtelet, Voltaire, and the translation of John Locke's works, among other philosophers. In general, most of those writers were against the education of the poor because they were afraid of it. So they wanted to leave their places inside a society. In consequence, the work of the brothers was a threat to the social stability. Considering the different problems from the education of the poor will give to society, but this opposition to the education of the poor was a direct recognition to the work of Lasallians. In the years the 1900s was a key period for the education in France. There were different awards in France within the education ambit. Pope Leo XIII, in a representation gathering from the La Salle, canonized St. John Baptist de La Salle. But we cannot live from the past. If we use our memory as our path to recall the future, we will be thinking of ancient ideas. But we should use the past and hold it in our memories to build a path that will make us do different things. This future will be possible if we challenge our fears through cooperation and commitment, as Lasallians would say, in association. There are different challenges that we face today and come from different parts. We have social challenges like immigration, and inequality. We have political challenges like popular systems within the government that are extended through the world. We have economic challenges like the lack of employment among young people that frustrates them. Some others are related to the environment, like climate change. But we are also facing ethical challenges, like the ones that come from advanced technology, artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, and neuroscience. These changes lead to a new comprehension of the human condition and their role within it. Some refer to this comprehension as a post-humanist. None of the challenge mentioned is less important than the other, but there is one that is urgent. The diverse forms of systems that approach to the poor. We need to recognize that there are many poor people. As Jesus Christ said to the poor, you will always be among people. So these times, our societies are looking to us, and we have to keep the poor in our minds, mainly in our hearts. In this way, they will inspire us within this assembly to discuss and discern and design different answers to the questions. These tasks, when we perform these tasks, we will go back to our institutions to provide salvation models to those who are far from this. Success within this task will allow us to celebrate an anniversary that, being more than a memory, will generate life. More than 300 years ago, in 1719, Jean-Baptiste de Lasalle passed away, entered into eternal life, and nonetheless, what we are celebrating this year is not his death, but the mission that he left us. We Lasallians, lay people, colleagues, have followed his steps, and this way they are building their path to God. We've created associations and communities to carry on this mission. So I wish to you all that to live fully these days, work hard to discover and build a strong relation that will lead to different partnerships. So I'd also like to wish you to enjoy this celebration environment. Let's stay together and live Jesus in our hearts.
Benvenuti Lasalliani.
Bienvenidos, Lasallianos.
Chers Lasalliens, bienvenue.
Bienvenidos.
환영합니다, 드라사에.
Bienvenidos a México.
Bienvenidos.
Welcome.
Bienvenidos.
Bienvenidos.
Soyez bienvenus.
Bienvenidos.
Saksietu.
Bienvenidos.
Bienvenidos.
Bienvenue.
Bienvenidos a casa, lasallistas del mundo.
We want to thank our sponsors, Google for Education, Rico, Lenovo, Porrua, Lumen, and UTEP, and Didactron. We also celebrate Brother Jose Gabriel Alba Villalobos, our visitor from Mexico District from the North. Welcome, brother. Before we start with our program, some important advices for the optimal development of the Congress. We will invite you to download the app of Symposium Events, select the event ICLE, and just sign up. In here you can see which is going to be the program with the visitors and participants of the Congress through the chat. You will have notifications and alerts. Also, the ID that you have, it is a brochure of the program when you will find the speeches and a map of Campus La Salle. The first one is in the Hospital Center. The hosters will be there if you have any doubt or question. Well, Jorge, now let's start with the academic activity of the Congress. All the jobs from today will be around the topic, context, and educational challenges. We will be in a better comprehension of our institutions and what they ask from us. The first conference from politics to the classroom will be given by Frances Pedro. Frances Pedro works in the educational system at UNESCO in France since 2010, where he leaderships educational activities, including the national activities, as well as comparative studies and international studies as well. Before, he worked in the Research Center and Innovation SETI from the OCDE, in which, as a senior, he was responsible for different programs as PALIS and New Millennium. He also led different research in the ODCE Congress. Francesc has studies in Barcelona University, and he has a PhD with a thesis in Madrid as well. Later on, he had some PhD studies in politics regarding education at London University. Franz is catedrátic in the University of Pompeu Fabra, Barcelona, where he was in charge of the direction of quality. Previously, he was Vice Rector of Research and Innovation of Oberta in Catalonia, in Barcelona, the first public university in Europe that offers its studies only online. Let's give him a big applause. Good morning, everybody. It is a great honor for me being part of this event, because this is really important, not only for you, that you are Lasallians, but also for the international level. A few days ago, UNESCO was part of this celebration of 300 years of an entity, of an institute that is always addressing education and people in need. I think that both speeches that we had today is a great expression of the challenge for this, and keep going with this task that you have. In second place, let me tell you something. This will be kind of weird, but I feel kind of uncomfortable right now, and you will understand why. I'm going to give you an example just to make you understand why. Just imagine that instead of being teachers, let's say that you are part of the Real Madrid, that soccer team. let's imagine that the celebration of your anniversary, you have this inaugurational speaker to a fan, to a big fan of the Barcelona. You know why I'm telling this? Because I'm from the Jesuits and I studied there for my whole life, and I feel kind of weird now in this situation. So I share with you some of the evidences that you have. But of course I cannot compete with the enthusiasm that we just saw previously in the first two speeches. So first of all, let me say something important. Let me land which are the challenges that we have to face nowadays. And I would like to start with something that is very interesting, that maybe just 3 or 4 years ago we didn't have. The first is that all the countries, and here is a good proof that we have representatives from all different countries, we share a global agenda. And this is the first time that happens to us, because this international agenda regarding education was only interested for all the developing countries. However, it's important to remind that the main goal to the development, to the sustainable development number 4, contains 4 elements that I think that are very important, because they tell us these kind of challenges. We talk about inclusion, we talk about equity, and this has a lot to do with what I'm going to say later on, and finally with the need of having a perspective, an educational perspective. This is very important to keep in mind, because from here into 2030 we're going to share 17 goals, and I'm going to give them all of them, and I will include some goals and some important goals. That's why it is important to share all the evidences that we have regarding what is going on nowadays with quality and equality. In other words, we started already have some data that can give us some information about who is doing the best things. I'm going to share with you some graphs. Don't worry about this. This presentation has a Creative Commons license, so you can get it easily from the organizers, and I invite you to use it and to share it just to promote the dialogue. So you will see a lot of charts, and I'm just going to mention some important details. The first one has to do with something that is well known. Nowadays, when we assess quality and equity, in most of the countries, developed countries, and with medium incomes, they address PISA of the OECD. This is a chart, a graph, that summarizes the 2 principal axes in which we judge nowadays equality and equity in countries. In first place, we have a vertical X, in which we can see different points that these countries obtained in 2015 in science field. The higher it is, the better result it has. We have here Japan, Finland, and Estonia. Then we have an horizontal axis. This shows that it has to do with the system equity. This is an axis that tries to represent till which point the origin or the abstraction, the social abstraction of the student is something important for the different key points. If it is to the right, it means that it is those countries have a good equity level. These are the results that we have from Finland, and are more than the ones that we have in Hungary. That means that these countries and their economic situation is something very important for the students. So in this chart we have 4 different areas. We would like to be here. Why? Because these are the countries with the higher notes, and at the same time these are the ones that are more equality. Up to now there's no country from Latin America. If I have to point out where the country I was born in, I have to point here that is Spain. It is in the middle, let's say between the quality results and equality as well. Mexico is the one that is in here. It has a good representation, and it's in a situation in which it is difficult because its results are below the medium, and it has only one advantage with an equity index in comparison with other countries in the region. Well, maybe this is something that you already know, and for all of us, or for some of us, is not well known. But what can we do about it? Nothing. It is important to notice that we start having this data, and we notice that that who is in here. This desire to know where all the different countries are, depending on their federal structure or depending on their different districts, is to know which states or which countries. For instance, I don't have Mexico's data, but I have Spain data, and these are, for instance, Castilla y León from Extremadura, or we can see the big difference that we have between them. Some regions in Spain, just as the same situation that Mexico has, and other countries where they have the same structure, and some regions are tilting like South Korea or Finland, are unfortunately more in the side of Dominican Republic, for instance. Just trying to be an objective. You're probably interested in this. But the most interesting part about this goes within the schools. Here, for instance, we have the result of an analysis of a group of 20 private schools in Spain that are centers, we could say, elite schools in the context of Spain, and we compare the results from their students and the result from other countries. You can see the message that this group is sending, and they're telling us that their students obtain great scores in comparison with other countries. Just check the results and realize that this is when you go to the doctor and it's like, look, Frances, your cholesterol is high, and we are interested how we can make your cholesterol go down. So we are trying to compare the same results with this. We have different formulas. People that is in charge of research can see that they have fundaments in different things. For instance, we have a very famous research that shows us that we don't really know why some countries get better results. We don't know, but we can try to make some hypotheses, and this can summarize with the figures in our hands, and we can give them the reason that it is a clear population or clear difference between the medium consumption between these countries. I have another, if you want, I can show it you to later. There's a better one between pizza and the consumption of fish between in a year. What I want to say is that we have a cholesterol rate high or low, but we just don't figure out with the diagnosis what can we do to improve that. So this is the question. It is not why Finland is always up. We want to know what can we do to improve our performance. We have to be conscious that the progress regarding education is something very difficult to achieve. Once again, I'm talking about the situation of the countries. Here, for instance, we have two countries, Portugal and Israel, that within 2006 and 2015, they improved greatly. It is higher the number of countries that we have in here in dark blue, that during this time they knew the same thing about how education works, and they improve their scores. That's why we are in a very difficult environment. We know what this is about, but it seems that when we have to do something about it, there's when we fail. Because with the quantity of data and with the knowledge that we have, it should be working everywhere. But how can we, why we don't have a lot of progress? So we have a question here, and it is a very important question to answer. And of course, some countries have great ideas. This, for instance, is a great campaign that in Colombia was developed, sending the message to the students that they were playing a match in which they had to give Colombia a high score, so that's why they needed to work hard to give Colombia a great score. As Brother Gustavo said, we are the ones that we are not in school to learn something. We are in school because we have to learn, because that is important for us and for the community that we live in. These are some of the strategies that some of the countries have developed. And in this sense, we are approaching to the daily life. Some schools wanted to have a good environment to make their lives easier or harder. It is a clear evidence that not all the countries that are represented in here have had the chance to feel it. Because in order to do that, in order to have an improvement in education, we have to have a consensus, and that can be done in different places. Here, for instance, we have two images, and we have two, in a poor environment, we can see here a farming boy and a boy. This is something that was launched in Finland after the Second World War, just trying to picture how was the image of a Finland person in 1946. So just look where Finland is nowadays. How did they achieve to grow in that way? This other image in here is from a boy that is in Korea at the end of the 50s. How is that possible that in just a few years they achieved to be in those places, at the same place as Finland is, even higher than other European countries? Achieving that idea that we share a main goal is something that helps a lot to the countries. But not everybody understands that, and it's something that we have to keep in mind when we work with the challenges in our education. You can say that even here, with the schools that are represented, they work in a different economic context. But we cannot ask for the same things to schools that don't have the same opportunities. Why did I say money talks? Well, because we applied it just till a certain point. Just look at this group of countries that we have here, and let's see where that we have a line here. We can see that an increase of the educational expenses is translated immediately in better results. And this is to reach $50,000 invested in one student in their school from 6 to 15 years. I will say it in different words. If you're in a country, for instance in here, that is investing $20,000 and you will achieve the next year to invest $30,000, obviously the results of their students will be better. Why? Because in order to have this project, this traditional project that we all have in mind, we need different conditions, let's say materials, that has also to do with how centers work, that cannot be reached until we reach this 50,000. This is the second most important one. What if they reach 50,000 per student? We have to invest more, 60, 80, 1,000, 120. Just look at Luxembourg, almost 200,000. That means that they have better results? No. Just look at it. Everybody is in here, following the same path, this horizontal path. That means that with a specific critical quantity, investing more money is not a synonym of getting better results. It is more important to know how can we use that money. The second thing, we've had different educational reforms all over the world, but you know something? You are countries in which, I don't know, Latin America, we have seen different statistics that show us that practically, because of their laws, and 3,15 per law, that can give us a chance to improve the reform. Even though being with the same party, we can increase the educational reform that sometimes substitutes the other one. And we don't know how we achieve this. What we know is that countries have different objectives, and they are always addressing the needs. To prepare, for instance, this is a logo, to prepare the future, one of the main roots of the reforms that they want to have. The same with the improvement of schools, or the equity and quality. As you saw before, this is an impact to the results. So what is happening? We're landing this question. "300 years have passed, and we just realized that the success of learning goes on each student that we have in our schools. This is something very simple. When we in PISA, or with national exams that you perform in your own countries, when we try to learn which is the level of knowledge or competences that whatever you want to say, students that are 15 years old, we're measuring the quality of the school. But in fact, what we are measuring is the quality of the itinerary that those individuals are having throughout these three environments: family, the pairs, and the school. Obviously, the school has something that I think it is very important to keep in mind, that it has something that the other don't have. So the thing that it can have, not only the work of instruction or educational from the teachers that we have, but also it is a place where they can gather between pairs, and it is also important that it is a place where we can attract families. But what is going on with public policies? The same thing. Public policies are important for us only because they give us a context, which is the way in which pairs live and experience this in school, because they have different influences. Because we know that when they're 12 years old, kids in developed countries, they spend 7 hours online, which is a capacity they have, not only of supervising what is going on when they're resting, also because that social communication, they don't have that social communication anymore. They know that they only go to school to get information, or do they know that they have work lines that together will let them grow as parents within the educational line? Therefore, we have to recognize that the impact of the policies is very important, and we underestimate this role. These results of learning that we have through our comparative exams are part of the student. I don't know if you can see it clear. This is a graph that tries to split the results. Let's say, how can we explain the differences between students? We have good and bad news. The thing is that half of those results are part of the students. And I'm going to give a clear example. Good news is that approximately almost a quarter of this depends on the quality of both. With this, with the point of view of the schools, we can have a change in here, and we have all our capacity to change the competences and the quality of their work. Obviously, there are other elements that have a specific influence. The bad news is that half of the results comes with the school bag that the student has. The thing is that a quarter of these results depend on that quality. That is very important. So being realistic is that we have to recognize that the source of the problem, as brother Gustavo said, is possibly here. This is a very common study that shows how between 3 and 6 years old, these are data gathered, kids can improve their vocabulary, or they can decrease their performance with their vocabulary depending on their families and the environment where they live in. When a kid is 6 years old, if he or she comes from a lower socioeconomical level, his or her vocabulary is going to be in 60. If they come from an upper socioeconomical level, they will be around 100. So this is practically the double. So let's think that most of in these cases, they don't have any educational. They don't have more vocabulary because at home they have more opportunities to talk to them. They have more opportunities and they are aware of their education. It is not about the money. It is about the richness, about the interaction they have, only showing what important element. So that's why it is important that half of the results depend on the students. We as teachers, or you as teachers, do have an important task to remind families till which point they can help us to make a difference. And we have also the commitment, apart from the hours at school, because we need to try to avoid these big differences that are way beyond of what is within the school. So we can summarize this that apart from being part of the student and its school bag, it is the work that allows us to make a difference. Let's see it again with an example.
This is a kind of fictional example. Imagine that you could have two kids that are twins. They look alike with the same capacities. For starters, the same social capacities, emotional, identical. So we have both in the same school, and one, through let's say 4 years, will be trained by good teachers with high capacities teachers, so they're an average student. And let's see what happens with this first kid, the one that has had the luck to be trained by an experienced teacher. He has enhanced his scores to all the way to a score of 50 points. So he reads from 5 to 9 or 10. But what happened with the twin? The one that didn't have much luck and started with a not well-prepared teacher, and his knowledge went down. He went from 5 to 4 or 3, and we see this empirical difference. So there's a debate about what policies can help us, but I think that we should focus on how to enhance the competences of the students. We've been through different stages. First, a stage in which maybe the fundamental recipe to center the attention in teachers' capacities was the autonomy of the school centers. So you who belong to one institution, ask yourselves what happens among the general statutes or linings to fulfill or achieve autonomy of the educational center. This has to do with the responsibilities of the school leaders. So these leaders have to be managers of a project, and he has to focus his attention in the economical resources, functional resources, etc. So it's like if he managed a store, a small store. This is a business in this sense. So from that stage, we have a new one, depending on the country, that instead of transferring all the responsibility to the educational center that handles different scores in equity and quality, we notice that educators must be asked to show the results. Show the results and transfer a educational culture in which the teacher can reflect his outcomes with students. We'll talk about this in more detail later. It has its negative and positive aspects. And we'll see also different gadgets like dashboards or control frames that you as educators use. We'll see that later. But look at this. We can find the word that is the most important thing for us, the word learning, because we're focusing our attention in other things. So if we focus in education, in learning, we need to think that we have to go beyond the scores, and how are we regarding these scores? So we need to start from the basis that each center has to be able to diagnose how to achieve the quality and equity of learning. When I say learning, think about the Anglo-Saxon root of the word for those Spanish speakers. But you should understand that when we talk about learning, we talk about things that are easy to measure. And we sometimes, within these measures, we lose important details. Now, we're in this stage in which we are still struggling to understand in which way can we enhance the reports on results and how to focus our attention in this improvement of knowledge. Within this line, it will be logical that we focus till what point can we innovate regarding what we do. Because sometimes with our traditional model that we have inherited, we don't think beyond the things that we can do to innovate and reinvent. So this is where I think it's important to retake the scope of innovation, educational innovation. And let's make a small test. Do you agree? What do you think? Okay. Well, I'm going to make a question, and it has to do with middle school students. So we have different aspects. I hope you can see and read quite well, but I'll read it. We have different strategies that we can use to learn science in middle school from students from 12, 14 years old. I'll read it from left to right, feedback, individual feedback, metacognitive strategies, group works, cooperational work, the number of students within classrooms, less than 20 students per classroom, the individualized learning. I've heard that you're laughing, but this is one of the other contests. Individual tutoring, adults that support teachers in a classroom, the enhancement of structures and buildings, and the use of streaming services that will allow that teachers to record their lessons and students can go through it in their homes. So which of these aspects in an impact scale from 0 to 10 do you think will get the best results? Think about it. So choose your options, and I'll show you what empirical evidence shows. How have you chosen one? Too bad that we don't have an award. Okay, so let's start. These are their results. And we've known this since learning psychology from years ago. And the important thing is that students have an individual feedback. And look till what point the tutoring in groups is important. Also the metacognitive strategies that we can apply. Let's say you say a student to sit with you and you're giving him feedback and ask him, why do you think you can't go through or advance in this aspect? What do you think you're lacking? What do you think you can do better? This enhances the learning process. So we have different comparisons in this table. Many of you are presidents or leaders in your institutions, and you might think this is a good idea, but you might ask yourself, okay, this is really nice, but how much is it? How much is it? How much do we need to invert? Okay, let's carry on. So this is what works, and how does it? What is its cost? So changes do happen through time, but the most important message that I want to tell you is that please, when you have strategical discussions about enhancing learning, we need to check on the evidence and go through it. And maybe for you, this is not surprising. These results are not surprising. But normally, our conversations don't follow that path. So innovations that go through the line of an individual learning are promising. Let's see what happens. Imagine that with this PISA data, we can also measure how to characterize these learning strategies that are predominant in a country. From countries, let's say, that go with a learning focus on mainly in the student, where the student's task has to limits to the classroom classwork, to others that take it through other activities and mainly involves the teacher. So we have an axis that measures the progress from teachers of a certain country and the traditional ways. Imagine that we can mix this score with the results in PISA, because how good is it to say that, well, we have programs in our schools and we have this and that and innovation, but yes, what are the results saying? So in the left, in a horizontal axis, we have the strategies from countries that have learning strategies focused on students, and in the right, countries that base their strategies in teachers, which are more traditional. So we have a vertical axis. And where do you think Finland will be, or Singapore, South Korea? That's the question, okay? Now let's see what happens. So we have all of these countries with these two axes, and we have here the results and the traditional ways and progress in terms of pedagogy. Look where the countries with better results are. There's a border that tends to go to the right. So the correct answer to this question about what innovations will allow us to improve would be that there where we have teachers that can manage within classrooms moments for traditional education and moments for innovation strategies will give us the answer. That will give us the best results. So we need to find a mix of strategies, as we're saying today, equity in learning, with a school concept throughout the world has to be focused on a mix between teacher competences and students. So project-based learning, we can say use project-based learning or use more technology. But we also need to understand that we need more competent teachers. And how can we achieve this? How can we ask more from them? So this is a first solution from different countries. And they've enhanced the evaluations and the assessments of teachers. Sorry, I wanted to show you something, but mainly around 85% of states in the US, part of the teacher's contract and the continuity of this contract is linked to the results that students have regarding learning. But the question is, have they achieved an improvement in results? The answer is not yet. Let's see what we can do now. Here we go. There. In white, we have all of the states where evaluations, teacher evaluations, accredit the improvement in results from students, and only in green, some states that those assessment strategies haven't showed an representative solution or score. And also in these states, we have lots of protests of teachers, so I think it has to do a little bit with it. Now, we need to focus beyond the school leaders, but in leadership. Leadership in which authority is recognized, not power, but the authority of the one who's saying or claiming to be more competent. So within this context, we have another small test. Imagine that you are all directors from a school, not leaders, heads of school. And these are the tasks that you can fulfill as directors. These may take lots of time of your life, but imagine which strategies or aspects do you think would be better for you to fulfill? This has to do with resources to enhance learning process. We are talking about the impact of the results improvement. Let's see. Well, this looks reasonable if we focus on learning, as we've seen in this table about teaching methods, that the most important things are the competences of the teachers. There should be a space that allows this development within the school. And the problem would be maybe that there's no time for this. There could be. It could be time. This is a schedule, a school schedule from a science professor of a public school in Singapore. This is from middle school. This is a 2-week schedule, week 1, week 2, and look at the orange areas, the orange squares, almost brown. Those squares represent the schools within classrooms, classroom hours. So 1/3 of the schedule. Now look at those that are yellow, that are less, like a 20%. Those have to do with activities in which this teacher leads a major group, a bigger group. As I know that you are not teenagers, but imagine if this auditorium was filled with teenagers with this kind of focus that you have here today. But we can achieve that. Anyway, let's say that if a regular average group of 30 students, during certain hours, she has under her care 3 groups, so 90 students. This means that the type of activity that she has to develop can't allow or is not adequate for an individual treatment. So let's suppose that we manage to have a control with discipline, but that's not all. It's not individualized. So this is what's happening in Singapore, in Finland, in Ontario. Those teachers focus on individualized students of those who are getting the lower scores. In Finland, they calculated that that 40% of mandatory school students would have the need to have this kind of support. If we see the medium or average of their schools, you won't invest more time in those who are doing better, but in those who are doing not so good, that need help, and that will have more problems in their way. So if we help them, automatically the average of the class will go up. So this is what we can see in Singapore, Finland, and different countries where teachers can manage big groups so that the other teachers can attack those needs from other students. So don't forget about the green squares. These cases are the time where this colleague, this teacher, can dedicate her time to research. In Singapore, in Finland, in Ontario, happens the same thing as in universities. I don't know in your countries because this is a diverse group, but mainly when a primary school teacher thinks how can a student can make his way to middle school and then to, let's say, college. But in reality, we should be focusing that those teachers stay thinking and focus in what they're teaching, the area that they're teaching. Because it's really common that we say, well, we have to be like colleges or universities, and they're not focusing on themselves. So we have different types of professors, different levels. And each level focuses in other levels. So we need to recognize those teachers that have an authority, a professional authority towards others, and through their pedagogical leadership should instruct or help other teachers with different competences, orienting them and making them focus their attention into their areas. So these are the different spaces that teachers exercise in these countries that I mentioned. So now, what about the teacher's development? This has to do with the institute that probably has or would have, and this has to do with professional standards. What do you think teachers should know? What would their capacities and skills should be? Number 2, every time that a new professor enters to an institution, there should be a pedagogical development, a clinical formation, not to leave them on their own. So help them to be a good teacher, show them their skills or train them so they could be good teachers from the beginning. They have to be under a supervision at first. Number 3, a permanent tutoring for teachers. I'll ask you, in how many of your centers do individual teachers expect gladly the visit of someone who supposedly, that could be a colleague, will help them to enhance their teaching practices? In which of those schools do people expect that gladly? Or in which centers it doesn't happen or barely happens or is seen as a negative thing or with a different regard? Think about it. So what we need is that the professional knowledge should be spread. And we need a transparent culture that we sometimes lack in different centers. So the best way to do this is to work with the expertise that we have within. So development opportunities, number 4. I'm sure that you have in most of the countries. UNESCO in 2011 published a study that accredited that 12 hours of teaching training outside the classroom, outside the working place, should be applied. Because what happens that they work within the week and then they come back on Monday, they detach and then they come back on Monday. What I mean is that they need coaching, different hours in which another teacher, basically from the same center or another center that belongs to the same network, comes to the classroom and helps me to solve or work with a certain aspect. Then we will talk about how we apply those aspects, the aspects that we talked about, and the actual application of it. So UNESCO has worked and showed positive results about this coaching and this kind of formation coaching, because it has to do directly with the needs of the teacher. This is a transparent culture that gives a opportunity, a growth opportunity for the teacher. And this final aspect has to do with management, a for talent within our professional lives. It is a challenge and is one of the most important because the teaching unions don't help a lot with it. And now I'll mention that all of these data that I try to digest for you has to do with the quality of a system. The quality of your educational center will never be higher than the qualities of the teachers that work in it. So if you want to enhance the quality of your centers, begin with your teachers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Frances Pedro, for your conference. Now I will ask Brother Gustavo Ramirez Barber, the General Counsel. Please come here to the stage with Frances Pedro so we can give you your reward. We will want to say hi to the delegations of Argentina. Where are you, Argentina? Welcome, Argentina. Honduras? Madagascar? Peru? Palestine? And Dominican Republic. Well, before we continue with the program, we would like to invite you to 3 activities. Please go to the e-posters from the workshops that we have at www.lasalle.mx or in the interactive screens that we have in Plaza Lasalle. Please go and know our gallery with the exhibition One Heart, One Commitment, One Life. It is a recopilation of authors that gather different emblematic events of Saint Jean-Baptiste de La Salle. We have books in English, French and Spanish on Thursday and Friday at 13:10 hours at the Hall of Food. In Plaza La Salle you will find the exhibition of publication of La Salle with 15 countries. Within the breaks we will have, you can see it in the program or in the app. We will invite the experts, and now it is time to begin with the panel. With these 3 days of the conferences, we will have a panel with experts. The thing is that we want to broaden our horizons. We want to value different ways in which pedagogy and Lasallian pedagogy we have nowadays. We are in different countries. We form different kids, youngs, and adults in different areas. Universities, culture houses, polytechnical institutes, and communities. We have different voices, and it is transcendental to hear everybody, recognize and retake good practices. The dynamic for the panel will be the next. This will be a panel with questions that will be made by the moderator. We won't have questions during the panel from the audience. However, you can make this at the end of the day. That means that around 15 hours and 45 minutes. By now, our staff will give you cards in which you will be able to ask some questions to the speakers. Please write down in these cards the question that you will address to the speakers, and then later on we will give those cards to the speakers. During the afternoon we will arise these questions and they will answer them. For this panel I have the pleasure to introduce to you as a moderator Jimena Duarte Rosado. Jimena is a journalist and he's from Lasallian University. Welcome, Jimena. Now let's give her a big applause. Good morning, everybody. It is a pleasure for me being here this morning with you. I can see some faces that I already know, and of course I'm learning a lot, and we will learn a lot during this event. I would like to start talking about Phillip Richard. He is the current General Secretary of the International and Catholic Education, and he has been an auditor in the 11th session of the Human Rights Institution of Esther, and also a member of the AYA. He is a director of Jean Moulin, teacher in international organizations, with a degree in defense and international defense. It is important to mention that in 2013 up to 2015 he was the director of the Catholic University of the Bourgogne Center in France. So if he please come with us, it will be an honor to introduce to you him. Please, let's give him a big applause. Well, then we will have as well in this stage Alexandre Allah. She is the General Secretary of International Children Bureau. He is from Italy. She speaks 4 languages and she has worked with the UN since 1991, and she has a lot of experience regarding the advocacy of international affairs regarding human rights and also about children's rights. Let's just imagine in this world in which we need all this support. Welcome, Alessandra. Big applause for her. Our third speaker, and I'm very happy to introduce to you Mr. Ojeda. He's a university teacher in Malaga and responsible for OEA of the Catholic education. He was named by the Vatican. He has a bachelor's degree and the former secretary in Spain, the president of university centers, and from the church in Spain. Please give him a big applause, Juan Antonio Ojeda. And last but not least, we have Carlos Federico Cuello. He's the Executive Director of National Universities of La Salle. He has a PhD in Political Sciences in Brazil. He collaborated with the Switzerland Collaboration for Research and Higher Education, and in the Ministry of Brazil as a member of work with Commerce and Globalization. He is a teacher and also Chief of International Relationships with La Salle and Rio de Janeiro. Let's give him a big applause. So please take a seat. We will start with this dynamic. Let's start, please, with Phillip Richard. Please, if you can start with the speech that you have for us.
Disculpe, no hablo española.
Sorry, but I don't speak Spanish.
Hablo la lengua del fundador, Jean-Sébastien de
I
Lasalle,
speak
francés.
French.
J'espère que vous allez pouvoir me comprendre.
I hope that you can understand.
Voilà, je vous remercie de votre invitation.
Okay, I would like to thank you for inviting me today. That for me it is very important because of different reasons. First of all, because I am the producer of Lasallian universities, in which I've worked a lot of time in here, and during this time, when I was a student, and afterwards when I was the director of a Lasallian university, I could understand the spirituality and the pedagogical vision of Saint Jean-Baptiste de Lasalle. I've always tried to integrate that spirituality and that pedagogical vision within the work and with the different visions and missions that were addressed to me in life. In the last one, as a educational ministry of the Catholic school.
Voilà. Alors, je vais intervenir à ce moment sur un point précis qui est un peu un lien entre l'exposé qui vient d'être fait et peut-être.
This is the link with the presentation that we just saw and the content of this panel. The thing is about the quality.
Con la calidad de la educación y que a partir de este punto va a unir las conferencias anteriores con su participación.
Lorsque l'on parle de qualité en éducation, on fait évidemment
When we talk about
référence
quality in
à
the presentation,
très
we
important.
refer to
Cuando
a
hablamos de
main
calidad,
objective.
se hace referencia a un objetivo muy particular y muy importante
qui relève du fameux ODD 4 dont on nous a parlé précédemment.
que hace referencia a los 4D
That comes
que
from
nos
objective
hablaron
number 4,
anteriormente.
from the
Et
development
qui
objectives.
nécessite que nous puissions vraiment nous mettre d'accord les uns et les autres sur une définition de
In order
ce terme de qualité en
to have
éducation.
that specific definition of the term of quality in education,
Nosotros podamos poner de acuerdo sobre lo que significa el término de calidad.
Le plus souvent, lorsque l'on fréquente depuis 20 ans, 30 ans les négociations internationales en ce qui
frequently when
concerne l'éducation,
we have the
Lo más
international
frecuentemente,
negotiations
cuando uno está en
regarding
todos los
education,
lobbies internacionales que hablan sobre educación,
je pense par exemple aux différentes conférences internationales sur l'éducation,
For example,
celles
the
qu'il y a eu,
differences
sans remonter très loin,
between
mais
the
au moins à
education.
Dakar en 2000 et puis en Corée du Sud en 2015.
for instance, here
que
in
cuando pienso en todas las
2015,
grandes conferencias, para irnos no muy lejos, la que se llevó a cabo en Dakar en el 2000 o en Incheon en el 2015 en Corea.
On constate bien souvent que l'éducation est prise, enfin, ou l'enseignement, pourrait-on dire, plutôt que
We can see
l'éducation,
that
est
education
prise souvent sous un angle assez quantitatif.
Podemos darnos cuenta que la
is
educación
viewed
y
from
más
a
concretamente la
quantitative
enseñanza
point
es
of view.
considerado desde un ángulo cuantitativo.
Avec des indicateurs de mesure qui sont finalement assez simples
With
à mettre en place, qui
indicators
sont de nature économétrique.
that are
Con
pretty easy to
indicadores que son
understand,
de naturaleza econométrica y que son bastante fáciles de poner en marcha.
Mais dès lors que l'on veut parler de qualité, on se heurte à un énorme problème de mesure de la qualité.
Pero cuando uno toca el tema de calidad, uno se confronta al gran tema de las medidas, cómo medir la calidad.
Et je crois que mon expérience de secrétaire général de l'Office international le montre à travers toutes les rencontres que je peux avoir dans l'ensemble des pays du monde. Il semble bien que l'éducation catholique, au sens large, mais aussi les congrégations, et encore plus peut-être l'Institut Lasalle, est en mesure, depuis très longtemps, de faire des propositions très fortes en ce qui concerne la qualité en éducation.
Y me doy cuenta yo cuando estoy en todos estos grandes debates y cuando represento la educación católica.
So regarding Catholic education, when I realize the education that all the congregations offer, and precisely Lasallians, I can realize that we have, as Lasallians, the possibilities of propose indicators so we can measure quality.
Peut-être nous aurons le temps dans cette table ronde d'y revenir aussi avec les autres orateurs.
Maybe in this table we can have different speakers and we can talk about that.
Je voudrais juste terminer cette première introduction en montrant combien le langage même de Jean-Baptiste de Lasalle il y a 300 ans est tellement actuel.
But I would like to finish my presentation, or my first presentation, showing how the language of Saint Jean-Baptiste de Lasalle it is very important and updated nowadays. And even though we cannot say that in a precise way, there are different expressions or different congregations.
Il a fini par imposer en quelque sorte un langage international de l'éducation qui ressemble aux propositions même du fondateur il y a 300 ans.
How we can notice or realize all the proposals that were addressed 300 years ago by Saint Jean-Baptiste de Lasalle. I will insist in a certain point. The gratuity point in schools, when Saint Jean-Baptiste de Lasalle decided to give this for free, he decided to give 22 schools for free.
Au Forum mondial de l'éducation en 2015, où on évoque la gratuité comme un élément indispensable du dispositif du droit à l'éducation.
And we can translate this with the 2015 forum when we talk about the gratuity as a main topic within the topics of education.
Je vais laisser la parole aux autres. Je termine juste en rappelant quand même une chose très importante, on y reviendra peut-être.
There's a lot of things that I would like to say, but I would like to finish with a main point.
Est un droit de l'homme.
That first of all, education is a right,
Et qu'en tant que droit de l'homme,
and because it is a right,
sans cesse.
it has to be conquered. We have to have that every
C'est la
time.
responsabilité de tous les acteurs, non seulement les acteurs gouvernementaux.
It is not only the responsibility of all the actors, not only the governmental actors, but only the non-governmental actors. That is the topic of all religion congregations in a wide aspect.
Pour que ce droit de l'homme, qui est le droit à l'éducation, puisse continuer d'être mis en œuvre pour la grande, sinon la totalité de la population. Il s'agit bien de l'éducation pour tous.
This right has to be carried out by everybody. Why? Because it is education for everybody. Well, with this, we would like to thank teacher your words. We will have 5 questions for each of the speakers, just to see which are the different perspectives that they can give to us, and with the same questions.
Those who need translation from French to Spanish will can listen to the channel number 2, from French to Spanish and Spanish to French, English to Spanish, channel 1, and vice versa. So, first question for Professor Phillip Richard: how to understand education from a global context and the educational challenges that it faces?
C'est une très large question.
Es una pregunta
Je dirais simplement
muy vasta, muy grande.
À partir du moment où on relie l'éducation à la question du développement, l'éducation devient un moyen du développement. Et dès lors, ce qui va devenir vraiment important dans cette problématique de l'éducation, c'est de pouvoir véritablement ajouter à la question de la transmission des connaissances.
So an important aspect in this matter is to add positive things to knowledge, add value to knowledge. In other words, we need to develop the world, but to what heading? And what is the representation of the world that we see? We need to find the added value within our work because we are able to achieve amazing things. Regarding the transmission of education,
elle est aussi d'ouvrir le champ de la représentation et du sens. C'est ce que le pape François dit quand il évoque la recréation du pacte éducatif.
Think about the educational pact, as Pope Francis mentioned. This is a wide question, and we can't split education from the other aspects. Muy bien. Good. Now, regarding the young people, what happens in terms of poverty and immigration? What do schools can do about these global aspects that affect us all, poverty and immigration?
Alors, elles font déjà beaucoup. Quand on traverse le monde, comme je le fais, je m'aperçois qu'il y a des trésors d'initiatives qui d'ailleurs
well, I know that there are different initiatives in a Catholic aspect. But of course, there are many things that we can do regarding immigration. It's a topic that I know well, that I'm familiar with in Middle East, and schools are really involved with children that come from Syria. There are 4 million Syrians that live in Syria, that established there, and are living there now. So schools, as well as married brothers, were engaged to educate these young people that are there as refugees. And behind this, we need to ask ourselves, mainly regarding immigration, its status, and we have to be able to integrate within our educational systems the solidarity and development within education regarding sustainable development topics which are related to poverty in big parts. We need to be present to welcome these children, but we need to go beyond. We need to work from the core with a strong education and ask ourselves, why are they migrating, and what's going on with all of these migration flows, and how to work on behalf of the world. Now, what you mentioned about the importance of education towards development, solidarity, thinking of others, what happens with education? This is an element that generates equality, or till a certain point can represent a division among people. Okay, so this question will lead us directly to a paradigm regarding education, its content. In French, we have two words to describe this. We have the word teaching, that transmits knowledge, and education, that has to do with something bigger, more wide, that has to do with the transmission of values. And in different languages, as in Spanish, we have education, educación. We have education in English. So this is a problem, an expression problem. And this makes this easier for us to achieve this development. I worked in different educational sectors in France, and we've seen a huge work towards sensibilization and for our students regarding world issues and, in this case, poverty. So in this case, if we want to define a quality criteria in education, we will have to focus on different criteria that are quite hard to evaluate. Let's put it this way. Education can and should save the world. Something that impressed me in an educational forum in Korea was that they were talking about education in quantitative terms. And I noticed that we need to move forward and go beyond. We are already doing that, thinking in other aspects of educational transformation for it to become a salvation project. So education should save the world. This means that all of these things that have been done in the past with teachers, that is also important. We need to add the idea of prophetizing. We need to be prophets. So each school, either it's a Lasallian one or not, should have this motto of heart that has to do with this word, a body of hope. So in each middle school, in each high school, we need to transform the educational act. We need to focus on things that can boost hope. Brother Juan Antonio will talk about the project I Can, and this is a project that builds hope. We need to generate hope. School is a body of hope, and we need to keep this in mind all the time. So as a teacher, as directors, leaders, we need to remember that everywhere we go, we're being prophets, and we have to work together and collaborate this hope, this sense of hope that the world needs. So quality is also important, but it will be meaningless if we do not emerge it into the salvation of the world. So education goes beyond knowledge, has to do with the transmission of values, and the value of education has to do with changing the world and spreading hope. So do you think this needs to be globalized? Well, I think the education should be spread worldwide. We can globalize it, and we can use different international aspects and criteria and topics, as the previous speaker mentioned through this amazing presentation. The moment in which education becomes a human right, we will be linking it to systems that will come from the international law that build an international community surrounding education and with aspects that we need to achieve. So this is a common aspect. The added value that we can give to our schools goes beyond. As I mentioned before, this will allow us to link these international treaties. For instance, Education 2040 is an international program and project that we need to follow. It's within the 2030 agenda. And yeah, I think it has to do with the added value that we need to give. Thank you very much. Now, we'll give the floor to Alexandre Allah. Please, if you can start with your speech. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here with the Lasallian brothers and this LaSalle network that are the main founders of the International Child Bureau. They are really present in the Lasallian community with our projects. They help us with our projects, and they bring this international solidarity to our borough. Now, I wanted to talk about this visa network regarding education. We're focused on law. We focus on rights, on human rights. Education is a human right, and I've seen this in many treaties, specifically in the Convention of the Children's Rights. So I've seen this in many treaties regarding an international scope. I think that it's really important to highlight that the states have different responsibilities and important responsibilities to apply these rights. It's an obligation from the state and a right for each individual. So we need to protect this right, and we need also to remember that a goal of education in the 26th article in the Human Rights Declaration has to do with the transmission of knowledge, but focused on values, solidarity, peace. So this is the frame in which we write our actions. Goal number 4 and different guidelines that we have within our treaties had to do with this right. As Frances Pedro mentioned, it is really important to follow up and give this continuity to public policies to enhance education. And I think that this corpus of rights will help us follow that path. So this is a challenge. It is a challenge that we need to address in congresses like this. We need to focus on the background since 1948 regarding education and rights. So we've talked about this in our pact within the borough, the school's autonomy, and especially Catholic schools, and autonomy among parents too, so they can choose what kind of education they want to provide to their children. So this is a commitment as well, a political commitment in this sense, to guarantee parents a right that is recognized. So sometimes it is ignored or people forget about it, but this is our job. We need to remind people about this right. And I also like to discuss later the right to education, to see it as in a cultural way and a global scope, a cultural right, and we need to build a memory within our memories what has been done and what happens with the development of children and adolescents. Alessandra, you are a specialist in defending children's rights. So what is the main challenge that you consider that society gives to schools? What is the main challenge? Well, there are a lot, especially in Occidental societies, where it is clear that the school autonomies, programs, curricula, and the responsibility of parents, that they can choose where they want to send their children, is a challenge, a big challenge. So we need to make a school a safe environment. We know that there are different ways of violence that take place within schools. So nowadays, and more than before, between families and parents, and we need to focus on how school faces these aspects. What do they offer within teacher training, and as well as politics to protect these people from this kind of violence. So we're talking also about digital aspects. This is a field that is not yet covered for children's rights. The Children's Rights Declaration was written in the same year that internet was launched. So we need to think in background. We need to understand how school can help to innovate and work with children's rights, with technology and advances that have been emerging. So since 2014, UNICEF states in the annual report that violence, online violence nowadays, is the biggest way of violence against children, either from parents or adults against children. So how would schools solve these issues? Okay, so in 3 words, how do you visualize the future of education? Okay, it's a tough one. I think that commitment is a word with a wide meaning, solidarity, and of course, learning. To learn, to know things. And I think that in school, we remember teachers that we had in school along our path. So that's also important. Teachers that had opened our eyes and taught us to be responsible human beings. So that's a big challenge to get and to know and have these professors that open our eyes and lead us to a commitment. Thank you. So teachers that open our eyes. Thank you. And now our third presenter.
I would like to thank the organization for this invitation. They asked me to talk from the Vatican or on behalf of the Church, which are the challenges or the obstacles we are facing our Catholic schools nowadays. An important thing regarding this framework with Church more than 50 years ago was the Congress, the Universal Congress of 2015, in which we were invited, or the Catholic schools were invited, to teach today and tomorrow, renewing the passion for education. So we were highlighting the topic of this Congress, clear orientation, that it's an education that is leading to the future. Our yesterday, it's a wonderful yesterday. The steps that our founder gave were very important. He knew better than anybody how to respond to different issues, and now he's trying to answer this new scenario, facing this changing world in crisis, giving a certain answer for education. So in order to have that, we need to transform education, and we need to transform school. Pope Francisco is keep telling us that if we want to change society, we need to change education. Within the same Congress, Pope invite us not to be afraid when we have to face this transformation, that for us it is a deep transformation of the educational project that we're trying to make more dynamic in our schools. He told us not to be afraid of something new. We are addressing to a new society that is changing. Therefore, the school and education has to change as well. So he was emphasizing what Professor Frances Pedro was telling us. We have a good agreement between what the Church is saying and what civil society is telling us. We need to focus on educators, on teachers. We need teachers with a lot of competence, able to communicate with love with kids and youngsters they're teaching to. We have two main features in here. They are good professionals, they are updated, etc. And at the same time, they are capable of being related in a different way, in a new, with love, with those kids. I think that is also an important thing, and it's part of our tradition. That love, definitely educate is to love, being the witnesses of education that we give. And Pope was telling us as well that being teachers of souls, being capable of giving life and blessed everybody. I like comparing the school as an entity that heals. We have kids in school with different environments, with poor environments or with divided families that are facing different situations, and they're looking for an oasis, a peaceful place to stay in. On the other hand, the Pope was inviting us to educate in a comprehensive way. It is not only important to know languages or math or sciences. Those are subjects that are interesting for the market, but are not interesting for the people. We need to educate in a comprehensive way. We have to educate our head, our hearts, and we have to educate our hands as well. If you allow me to say this, I think that I do agree with this, and the important thing about this, with a lot of research that we have had, is that we have to educate our hearts. Our kids need to be capable or able to be empathic, facing different situations, and we need to find a solution, trying to find the truth, and not only to stay in there with knowledge. We need to be capable of transforming their lives and their context with the commitment and the responsibility with improvement. I think that we need to change in this sense. An important challenge that I was told by the Church with the last publication is that educating humanism. Philip mentioned that before. It is important to humanize education so we can humanize society. The world is falling apart, and it's not with humans anymore. We're like the things that we achieved throughout this story Now it is getting worse, and the school cannot support or cannot give the back to this situation. If we keep looking to the past, people would say that this is something that is betraying us. But our kids need to learn how to be among others. It has an important benefit, and it is important what is going on today. Kids, boys and girls, need to learn how to be. In 1972, it was told that they need to learn how to be human beings. This has to do with Catholic schools as well, and of course with Lasallian schools. They need to know how to be humans, people with different features that will help them to improve the quality and the situation like us. On the other hand, we need to learn how to be part of nature. Our climate, the climate change is getting worse, and this is not good in the story or the history, but we are using and just throwing away. However, we're reaching a certain point in which we're not getting back that things that we threw away, and it is important to make a change with that so we can improve the context, the natural context we are developing in. This is a common goal, as Greta Thunberg, this girl that was manifesting herself in front of the parliament. I don't want to criticize her, I just want to mention that is good, but I think that is lacking to have more action. She was telling us that a crisis, we need to manage it as a crisis. Once we have a dirty garden or we have a lot of trash in our garden, the thing is that the common place is on fire. We were talking about migration, and they need to leave their homes or their homelands because the place where they live in is falling apart because of the climate change. Therefore, we have to move. And in order to do that, one of the challenges that we are having as Catholic schools, in which the Vatican is taking place, and as well the generals in this project ICANN. This is a very simple project that is supporting boys and girls, so they will be the agents that will change their personal context, their social and environmental context. This is carried out with a methodology of a project that is going to empower girls and boys in 4 simple steps. As I said before, as the Pope mentioned it before, it comes from the heart, it feels empathic, how it is, what is going on with the city, with the classroom, with the country. So from that, then they can create different projects, thinking or taking into account different solutions, possible solutions that are feasible with others. So we can take that into words, we can practice those projects, we can transform those contexts. And the 4th step is to share those projects so we can share the rest of the people. I would like to add that we know way more, that we are capable, that we can do it. It is good to keep forming ourselves, to keep reflecting ourselves, but it is also urgent to put into practice what we know already. And it is going to be from the practice where we will find the evidence of who is going to be the center of the education, which is going to be the role of the student, and which is going to be the role of the teacher. And only with the practice is when the youngsters or future societies is how they will learn, actually. So one of the main activities is to learn to be together. How can our students be together in the same classroom if we keep repeating, please shut up, please sit down, one after another, and if we keep just saying the same things? We need to talk another language. Then we need to put all the desks together so we can cooperate, so we can have more solidarity between peers. And we have to say, okay, copy with the other, talk to the other, and so that will be the way in which practice will teach them to transform their lives. brother, with what you were saying, teaching our hearts, having a comprehensive education, and taking care of nature. And the last thing I would like you to tell us or to share with us a practical suggestion. So whenever we get out of here, all of us that we are in charge of education, so we can carry that with us, so we can exercise that. I would like to add this last word, that is to collaborate. It is impossible to innovate without collaboration. There's different perspectives that we have, and it is not because I'm saying this. It is because there are research about this. For instance, Pasquin William, it says that the World of Organization says that the way in which institutions or organizations are as educational institutions is to collaborate or die. There's no other way. We have the possibility to collaborate, but we have to be very honest and we have to be sincere. We are with the paradigm of competency. We want to compete. We don't want to be copied. We don't want the others to be as important as us. We want to be the best. That's why it is important to collaborate. And this is also written in this document that I mentioned before, regarding the collaboration of Catholic schools. This shows us a horizon, a negative horizon. In the Vatican, it was said that the schools weren't able to leave a teacher, so the teacher can help other schools to have different transformations with the methodology, with the curriculum, and with the assessment as well. 50 years have gone through and no one have done anything about it. It is said that it is important to collaborate and work all together. So this is a collaboration. First of all, it has to be within the center, with the main core. How many dynamisms do we have in practice? And we don't give any continuity, we don't follow up that. For instance, when during the stage of childhood, we follow that and we give them freedom, but whenever they reach the elementary school, we say just shut up and sit down. In secondary or in high school, it's even worse. If it is important, it has to have a follow-up with all the stages during education. Even though in university, there are schools with 100, 200 students working in a collaborative way in small groups. And the collaboration is not only within the group, but also out of the group, with other schools. The main scenario in which we can learn how to collaborate will be among us, because collaboration with one school from Lasalle and other is the same. We have the same values. We don't have any problems with copying one to each other. I've been researching this for 15 years, but when we are with other colleagues collaborating, we don't go with trust. We distrust the other one because maybe he will copy me or whatever. Nowadays, if we address other initiatives, you have taken an airplane, right? Before, it was impossible to be in an Iberia airplane or Aeromexico if you weren't from Mexico or from Iberia. Now we are from Iberia and there are different companies that are flying in the same aircraft. So the aircraft from Iberia, that Boeing or Airbus, wasn't built by a single company. It is a group of companies in which each has given the best of what they have. If they have the best engine, they put the best engine. If they have the best chassis, they give the best chassis. And there are different ways because they listen to each other. So in that way, we have to collaborate. Not only among others that we can have a lot of ideas with a collaboration, but we need to be able to collaborate with other institutions so we can carry out the project of Catholic schools as a reality that we are living nowadays. With the Fratelli project, where we have Lasallian brothers working in a project of Syrian migrants. Brother, you gave us a lot of reflection. It is a big task. Not trusting anybody is the path to death. So please give him a big applause. With this word that let us thinking, changing our personal life, not only our teaching life. I would like to remind you, before we go to the last speaker, that you can start making your questions. There are some guys around with some cards. These questions will be responded at 3 p.m. And maybe if you have any question that you would like to be answered. And just to finish with this, Carlos Coelho, we will be glad to hear your voice.
Gracias a los organizadores por invitarme. Es un placer regresar a México. Siempre me han dado una gran bienvenida aquí. Me pidieron que diera una perspectiva sobre la internacionalización. Y bueno, creo que estuve a punto de interrumpirlo, hermano, porque estaba hablando sobre todo lo que yo iba a decir hoy. Pero voy a tratar de parafrasear y reforzar esos argumentos. David Livingstone, y no del David Livingstone de la Universidad de Lewis, sino un explorador británico, David Livingstone, dijo que todos vemos el mundo como uno solo. Él lo escribió hace mucho tiempo, en el que había barcos de vapor y cosas así. Así que todos estos procesos por los que pasamos nos parecen indicar que lo que estamos viviendo es algo único y que no sucedió en el pasado. Podría ser, sí, único en las maneras, pero la revolución en sí, que comenzó en el año 1900, los avances tecnológicos que han habido con el paso del tiempo, no son nuevos como sociedad en conjunto. Creo que a veces la educación es lo que hacemos, recordemos eso, es lo que hace Lasalle. Así que muchas veces hay este mito de que tenemos que tomar un paso atrás, dar un paso atrás. Y recordar que la educación es un proceso como todos, es nuestra razón de ser y de cómo hacemos las cosas. La educación requiere, como muchos otros aspectos y áreas, nuestra atención. Así que, bueno, trataré no de hablar tanto sobre la globalización, pero esto nos brinda un contexto y un camino en el que se crean políticas y en el que se enseña o instruye a nuestros alumnos a nivel primaria, secundaria y universidad. Así que no podemos escaparnos de este concepto. La revolución tecnológica, grandes conglomerados en el sector educativo. He escuchado 3 veces por lo menos hoy que la educación es un derecho y estoy completamente de acuerdo. Y creo que todos estamos de acuerdo con ello. Pero tenemos que tomar en cuenta también que en muchos otros enfoques la educación no es un derecho, es una comodidad. Y la gente tiende a verlo de esta manera. Y no estoy diciendo que debemos renunciar o estar de acuerdo o no estar de acuerdo. Simplemente tenemos que pensar en muchas maneras en las que podemos cambiar a la sociedad. Así que no tiene que ver con qué tan de acuerdo no estemos, sino el ajustarnos a estas nuevas realidades. Y y sobre todo las instituciones de educación superior alrededor del mundo. Estas instituciones lasallistas tienen que competir con otras. Se donan libros, tabletas, la gente cree que es fantástico, pero pues realmente es disminuir el precio, por ejemplo, que podrían invertir en la biblioteca, y se está limitando el enfoque de lo que los alumnos están obteniendo, por decirlo así, en términos de educación. Y tenemos que darnos cuenta de ello. Tenemos que pensar en el efecto que nosotros podemos dar. Podemos cambiar la situación. Tenemos que adaptarnos a las nuevas circunstancias. Así que creo, la analogía que siempre utilizo, no me refiero a un tsunami que nos esté atacando, más bien ha llegado y entrado paulatinamente y estamos tratando de encontrar una isla en la que nos podamos refugiar. Y creo que el fenómeno que vemos en la educación superior lo vemos ahora claramente en Sudamérica, por lo menos, en primarias y secundarias, grandes conglomerados en el sector primaria y secundaria. Y creo que tiene que haber un papel para nosotros, y creo que existe. Pero también hay una urgencia para que actuemos y otorguemos y brindemos respuestas a los diferentes retos. Yo, dentro de la Asociación de Universidades Lasallistas, creo que la respuesta tiene que ver con el trabajo conjunto en la red. Puede ser la red lasallista, jesuitas, todo para crear una familia más grande. Pero ciertamente creo que nosotros tenemos un papel y tenemos que encontrarlo. Okay, Carlos, I'd like to ask you about these challenges that you mentioned. Do you think that they can become opportunities? And till what point they can become threats? Okay, bueno, no quiero parecer negativo. Creo que traté de esquivar, creo que ya mencioné las amenazas, entonces voy a hablar mejor de las oportunidades. Voy a darle un ejemplo muy sencillo. En Río de Janeiro tenemos el colegio británico. Todos quieren que sus hijos vayan a colegios bilingües y tenemos el colegio británico, americano, y son escuelas muy buenas, pero muy caras. ¿Y por qué no puede haber una escuela lasallista? Y no todo el currículum tiene que ser internacional, pero puede ser 20% a lo mejor. Y que sea común, que le demos un valor diferente. Ese es el punto clave. No vamos a poder competir con los conglomerados, siempre tienen una escala diversa de cosas en común. Entonces tenemos que buscar otra respuesta, porque esta no la es. Pensar en cuál es la diferencia que podemos traer a nuestras escuelas, universidades preparatorias. Thank you very much, Carlos. We ran out of time for this conference. I am a graduate from this school, and I'm really proud of being here and listen to all of these incredible testimonies. So every time that I'm presenting a program that has to do with this, I feel really proud, and I thank LaSalle and the Lasallian institutions as well. So please, another round of applause for our experts. If you have more questions or doubts, at 3:45 p.m. will be solved, so write those down in your cards. Now we're gonna give you a diploma, so please wait here. have different activities that will